This financial literacy video is brought to you by Young Kings and Queens in partnership with Comerica Bank.
All right. Keisha, thank you. So welcome to our ongoing financial literacy series. And tonight we're going to talk identity theft, specifically understanding identity theft, protecting ourselves from it, and preventing. You may think protecting and preventing are the same thing, and you may be right, but I needed 3 words for that title to look right. So, identity theft. My name is Joe Kaiser, as Takesha said. I work at Old National Bank here in Kalamazoo. There's my contact information. So if you have any questions, well, first of all, if you have any questions during this presentation, please just ask on Facebook and it'll show up. Takesha will make it show up here on Zoom. Otherwise, please do feel free to give me a call or an email if you have any questions about anything. Okay. So let's get into it. This is a bit of a disclaimer in that the information I want to share with you is the goal is so that we are informed, not afraid. So the disclaimer here is this information is so that we are informed and afraid. Don't be afraid, be informed. Identity theft. First of all, this is a social security card. If you're carrying this around in your wallet, please stop that immediately. Your social security number is a 9-digit number that is unique to you and your identity. And for better or worse in our country, it is what we use to keep track of our financial records. Your credit, for example, which we talked all about a couple weeks ago, your credit is directly tied to your social security number. So oftentimes, in the process of identity theft, the thief is looking for your social security number. That is often considered the holy grail. What is identity theft? Well, identity theft occurs when someone assumes your identity in order to perform fraud or another criminal act. So they don't just assume your identity because they do so in order to commit fraud in your name. Criminals can get the information they need to assume your identity from a variety of sources, including from your wallet. So that's super common, especially if we drop our wallet or our purse, or if it gets stolen or pickpocketed. That's why it's a great reason to, if at all possible, memorize your social security number rather than writing it down. Rifling through your trash, that's certainly an old school method, but it happens a lot. In my lifetime, shredders of paper shredders have become really popular because the prevalence of thieves rifling through our trash or our mailboxes is more common now than ever. Now, stealing your wallet or rifling through your trash, that's a very physical method of identity theft. Perhaps certainly a more common form of identity theft in 2022 would be an electronic compromising of your credit or of your bank information. And this is most often done by phishing with a PH, and that's a word that we will define later on tonight if you don't know it already, or skimming, and we will also define that in a little bit. And then also just out and out scams, as Takesha mentioned to start us tonight. Scams are very prevalent online, and these include lottery scams, such as you've won the lottery. I've worked in banking my whole life, and I've spent a lot of time working in the branches and interacting with customers on a day-to-day basis. And the number of folks who bring in printouts of emails that want to know if they're real or fake is really surprising. It's high. And a lot of those emails have to do with the lottery that say, hey, you've won the lottery, congratulations. Now, in order to claim this lottery prize, we need you to first send us a check, a cashier's check or a money order or a gift card in the amount of $2,000 to cover taxes or something like that. And that is always a scam, always a scam. The number one hint to whether or not that's a scam is, did you enter that lottery? Did you buy a ticket to win that lottery? because there are no lotteries that you are automatically entered into. The Foreign Princes email, that's an oldie, but a goodie, but a baddie. And then Craigslist and eBay. Those online marketplaces where people can exchange goods sort of peer-to-peer, meaning, if you buy a table from me, I ship the table to you and then you send me a check, or preferably you use PayPal, but most of the time scams involve checks. So a common eBay scam is similar in structure to the lottery scam. So say you bought that table that I had listed on eBay for $500 because it's a really cool table. I'm a scammer online, and then I would send a note to you that said, thank you so much for, no, let's do it the other way. You're selling the table and I'm a scammer and I'm going to buy it from you. This is more how this scam goes down. So you're selling a table for $500 on eBay, fancy table, and I want to buy it, but I'm a scammer. And so what I will do is I will agree to buy it for $500, and then I'll send you a check in the mail. And the check that you receive will look like an official check or a certified check or a money order, and it'll be for more than $500, sometimes for significantly more than $500. And so me, the scammer, I will tell you selling the table that, hey, I sent you extra. I sent that for shipping or accidentally. So you just go ahead and keep that and still send me the table. No, in reality, or you send me back, you keep the $500 and send me back the rest. That's most often how that scam goes down. And so what you would do is you would take that check, that fake check, to your bank or credit union, and you deposit it. And then you withdraw back out a check for whatever the excess of over $500 was. And then you mail the table and the extra money back to me, the scammer. And it turns out that whole check was fake. And so now I'm out all of that money plus the table. That's usually how an online scam goes down. Phishing, let me cover that. I said I was going to cover it later, and I will, but this is a good time to cover phishing. So phishing with a PH refers to the fact that the thief is fishing for information from you. They are setting a trap or baiting a hook and then sending it to you and hoping you respond to that hook. Phishing emails, so phishing is most often done via email. Phishing emails will look like a legitimate email, perhaps from a company that you even do business with. It's very common and dangerous to receive emails from your bank and your credit union that are actually phishing emails. They'll come in and they'll look real, but they'll ask you to do something that no bank or credit union ever would. They'll say, hey, we need to verify some information on your account. Or they might say there's a problem with your account. And we need you to click here and log into your account to fix it. And it's the click here part that is going to be the scam and why they call this phishing. So you click on the link, and it actually takes you to a website that may look very similar or even identical to your bank or credit union. But in reality, it's a fake website. And when you type in your username and your password, that you've compromised your information and given that to the thief. So phishing is when the criminal fishes you for information and you unwittingly, unknowingly give it up. That is the most common type of identity theft that's done on a computer. So oftentimes we'll hear about hackers or people hacking into our accounts. In all of my years of banking, I've never seen a hacking incident where a criminal hacked into the database of a bank or a credit union and stole information. What I have seen often is customers unknowingly or mistakenly giving up their information to a thief because of a phishing attack. Skimming refers to ATM skimming. So you may have seen reports on the news about this. It sort of comes and goes in waves in our area, but we have had incidences of ATM skimming in Kalamazoo and Battle Creek in Southwest Michigan. Essentially what a criminal does is they attach a device to an ATM or a gas station pump wherever someone is swiping their debit card. And you will swipe your debit card at the ATM or insert it if it's a chip reader. And when you do that, it passes through the criminal's skimmer. They call it a skimming device. And your transaction may even still work as you expected it to, but you may have also unknowingly swiped and given your card number and all of the information encoded to the criminal, and then your PIN number if it's an ATM. So the only way to avoid that is to be observant. Actually, that should be rule number one for how to avoid identity theft in general. Be observant. When you go to the ATM or the gas pump, just be observant. Does everything look as it should? Does it look neat and professional? Or does it look like it's been broken into? Sometimes, if the criminal is really professional, it won't, there's nothing you can do. But those cases are extremely rare. And again, identity theft can happen in person, by phone, or over the internet. Let's see here. I'm going to monitor the chat, make sure that's clear. Again, if you are live with us on Facebook, please just ask a question and it'll get to us in chat. Okay, so what do the thieves really want? Well, we talked about this already, but your name, your address, your birthday, but then most importantly, your social security number. Your social security number is the key to unlocking your credit. They also want other things like your mother's maiden name and anything that might be a key to your password or security questions, like your kids' names, your pets' names, your hobbies, your job history, your cars, stuff you might post on Facebook. So you may notice here, some of these things are questions that a bank or credit union might ask to verify if you're you. So for example, if you came into my bank and you lost your ID, which does happen, we would ask, what's your birthday, what's your address, what's your social security number, and your mother's maiden name. And you might even have attached a password or a security question to your account. Well, an identity thief is after this information, and for this reason, so that they can impersonate you to many different types of businesses, but one dangerous type is your bank or your credit union. And so some of this information you have to really be careful of, especially on social media and Facebook. So you should be protective of your kids' names, your pets' names, your interests. You should be protective of photos. You should definitely use Facebook's privacy settings to the best of your ability. Use them to your advantage, because they will help strangers or potential identity thieves, or sometimes we even call them social engineers, because they're trying to socially engineer this information away from you. Unless they're a friend of yours on Facebook, you can then block this information, which is useful. And then your password, thieves also really want your password. I put a note here. What's the most common password in the United States? It's password. So the most common password in the United States is password, the word password. If that's your password, please log off and change it immediately to something complicated. This is an example of a complicated password. I know you'll never be able to remember that, but it features special characters, uppercase letters, lowercase numbers. You're probably very familiar with how to set up a complicated password. So what I'd really want to say about that is it's important that you do so. And it's also important that you change them at least every 6 months. It's also important that you try not to use the same password from website to website. I am embarrassingly guilty of that for sure. But recently I've started to use what we call a password manager. So there are pieces of software out there, some of them free, that are called password managers, and they'll help you manage your passwords for different websites. I found it to be very helpful, and it allows me to have complicated passwords that I could never type out, but I can still remember them because I've got my password manager. Okay. So how do thieves become you? And you'll notice one of the themes tonight is we've got old methods and new methods. Old methods never go out of style. So old methods are still current methods, but those include stealing your wallet or your purse, stealing your mail, invading your trash, or listening for personal information when you're on your phone. So a lot of these things we can certainly prevent. Your wallet or your purse, keep that close to you. If you carry your wallet in your back pocket, consider moving it to your front pocket. Your mail, don't let your mail sit in your mailbox for too long, for two reasons. One, criminals can learn a lot of information about you from your mail, what you subscribe to. You may get, I'm sure you've seen a lot of pre-approved credit offers from different banks and credit unions. Well, when you open that up, that's got a lot of personal information in there. There is a way that you can opt out of receiving those prepaid offers, by the way, and I suggest you do that. And then also, if you have outgoing mail with your red flag up so that the mail carrier knows to pick up a letter, thieves often know that is a bill that's going out. And so they will take that bill or whatever it might be, but they're hoping for a check that you're paying a bill. They'll take that and they can take that home, and then on a check, on a paper check, is all of your account information. It's just right there out in the open. Some criminals will use your account information to commit further fraud. Others will actually physically wash the check and write a new number on there and a new payee. So the payee would be them and the number would be higher than you wrote it. And then they'll take it to your bank or credit union and try to cash it. Sometimes they succeed and sometimes they don't. But if you can prevent that in the first place, that would be ideal. So new methods. The new methods that thieves use to steal our identities are scary, and they involve use of electronics. So hiding software on your computer to log your keystrokes, that's also called key logging or malware or malicious software. That's software that gets installed without your knowledge on your computer and records every keystroke that you make, including your passwords. Ways to avoid that: having antivirus software on your computers. There are free antivirus software programs you can get out there, or there are some reasonably priced ones too. But it's important that you regularly check your devices, especially your computers, for malware and other malicious software. Other method, phishing. So we talked extensively about phishing on the previous the previous slide. We also talked about skimming devices on ATMs or gas pumps. And then also, criminals can often target organizations that already have your information. So here I'm talking about data breaches and compromised debit cards. Our news right now is very busy. There's a lot going on in the world. But there were times in the past when data breaches would often make the news. They still happen. but these are some famous ones. Target, Home Depot, they had some famous data breaches. And what a data breach is when a company gets broken into, and usually digitally, not physically, and their customer information is stolen. So Home Depot and Target, they may not have your social security number, but they probably have your phone number, your address, your email, maybe your buying history, that someone who's really looking to socially engineer further fraud on your behalf could use. And if you've got a credit card at Target or Home Depot, then they probably got your social security number there too. Okay, so the goal is to protect ourselves and those that we love. Here are the tips that we've talked about, and some that we haven't. Don't carry your social security number with you or in your car. Your social security should be ideally memorized and never written down. But if you need to write it down or keep it in a safe place, consider a safe at your house, or many banks and credit unions offer safety deposit boxes, which is essentially a safe or a vault that you can rent for a monthly fee. Stop mail when you're out of town for a few days. We're coming up on spring break. Some of us may be out of town for a few days during spring break. It's important that you either stop your mail with the post office, and they can do that for free, or get to know your neighbor and ask your neighbor to pick up your mail. Thieves look for signs that we are gone. And I know that's not news to you. That's a general home security knowledge, but it's important when we think of our identities as well. When people when thieves see a pile of Amazon boxes at our front door, mail coming out of the mailbox, or as I noticed this winter, an unshoveled driveway, that tips thieves off that people are not home, and so that leaves their mail and other identifiable information vulnerable. So I'm not saying don't leave for the winter and make sure your driveway is always plowed. I'm saying stop your mail and do what you can to prevent that information from sitting out there for thieves to steal. Be careful what you say, especially on your cell phone in public. I bet all of us have a story or two of overhearing some things we shouldn't in public on our cell phone. Sometimes that can be sensitive information. Use antivirus software and set it to scan automatically every day. Very important. Antivirus software is set and tuned to pick up on malware and software that's on our computer that shouldn't be, that might be harming us. Probably the most important thing that I could tell you this evening is bullet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Review your credit report regularly. And that was another thing that we really honed in on when we talked about credit a few weeks ago. Review your credit report regularly. You can do it for free at annualcreditreport.com. Reviewing your credit report is the #1 way you'll be able to spot potential identity theft. You'll be able to see perhaps a name that you don't recognize on there, perhaps a loan or a credit card that you didn't take out. That is ultimately what an identity thief is hoping to do: impersonate you to obtain some credit, buy a car or an RV using your credit. You can use annualcreditreport.com to monitor for that, among other things. I mean, in addition to identity theft, you should just be on top of your credit report for reasons that we talked about a couple weeks ago. And then the last tip on this page: utilize online bill pay through your financial institution so you don't have to mail checks. So in my opinion, it's 2022 and none of us should be writing any checks. We should be doing all of our banking electronically. #1 is cheaper because it's free. And #2, it saves us from identity theft, at least using the old methods of thieves stealing items out of our mailbox. And again, here, your red flag for the mailman is also a signal to thieves that there's something tasty in your mailbox. Tasty. Who wrote this? I wrote this. Okay, further tips, and we've talked about these, but I want to hint on some. Use a complicated random password. And if you can't remember a complicated random password like me, use a password manager. So several antivirus software packages offer a password manager. And especially try to use a different password from one website to another. We talked about data breaches, right? And so think back to Target. So if you have an account at Target, Target.com, and you used like your password, many of us have our password. If you used your typical password on Target.com and there was a data breach, now a criminal has your email and your password to potentially dozens, hundreds of other websites, which is scary. And that is definitely the first thing that an identity thief will try to do, is try other websites, particularly banking websites, to see if your Target.com website password matches your online banking password. And if we do, that's not good. Now, a couple of other things that you can do here that I didn't write on this slide that I want to mention. Almost all banks and credit unions now offer what we call two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is something that I bet you've used, but maybe you haven't heard it called that before. When you log into a website and you type in your username and then your password, and then they ask you for another piece of information, either a code that is texted to you or a code that you generate with an authentication app on your phone. When that third piece of identifying information is called two-factor identification, and that's a great way to avoid identity theft. Bullet 2 is really outdated. Order checks only from your financial institution and not from the Sunday paper. First of all, who gets the Sunday paper anymore? But maybe some. In the back of the Sunday paper, there used to be a lot of companies that would offer like free checks or super cheap checks for customers, and they were notorious for being careless with account information. So only order checks from your financial institutions if you need to write checks. Don't give out personal information over the phone unless you're positive of who you're dealing with. If someone calls you for information, you call them back and give it to them. So for example, your bank or credit union will never call you to ask for personal information or to ask you to update personal information. And here's a tip: if your bank or credit union ever does call you and you think it might be legitimate, simply hang up and ask if it's okay if you call them back, and it is okay that you call them back. So in other words, if you get a call from Bank of America or someone saying they're from Bank of America and that they need to verify some information for you, I would recommend to say, no, thank you, hang up, and then call Bank of America myself using a number that I know is Bank of America. Here's a good tip, number 4, sign the back of your credit cards and your debit cards. Also include photo ID required, or CID. I think that's a great gesture. Whether or not the merchant or the server at a restaurant actually does it is another question mark. It's not a legally binding thing that they have to do, but I think it can't hurt if you put photo ID required or CID on the back of your card. That is one more potential step that could save you from identity theft if a thief had stolen your debit card. If you're really concerned with identity theft, or if you're in an area where identity theft, particularly out of a mailbox, has been reported, you could consider using a PO box instead of a mailbox. And then the last bullet on this slide, read and reconcile or balance your bank statements each month. Look for fraudulent transactions. The cool thing about banking is anything that's been done can be undone, especially if it's fraud. But the interesting thing about fraud is oftentimes your bank or credit union won't catch it because the thief has stolen your identity. So they look like you on paper. And so sometimes you are the only one that's going to know that that's fraud. So it's important that when your bank statement comes either in the mail or online, that you look it over and balance it with your checkbook, if you keep a checkbook or however you keep track of your finances. Look for those fraudulent transactions because some banks and credit unions only allow you to dispute a charge for a certain number of days, like 90 days. So that would be an issue. Okay, let me check to see if we have any questions going on. I don't see any. Hopefully you're enjoying and learning something from our identity theft presentation. Let's take some time to talk about some common scams. So we've spent the first 35 minutes talking about how to prevent someone from stealing your identity to commit fraud. Now let's talk about some common scams and ways we can avoid them. And the biggie, the one that is really prevalent, especially this time of year in the spring, is tax fraud. So tax-related identity theft occurs when someone uses your stolen Social Security number to file a tax return on your behalf. This is very prevalent. You may be unaware that this has happened until you try to file your own return. And then you get a notice that the IRS says your return has already been filed. Or sometimes the IRS may send you a letter. That's usually how you know. The most common way that I've seen folks discover that they are experiencing IRS fraud or tax fraud is when they go to file their return and they get that message from the IRS that a return has already been filed. That's an indicator that there's fraud. So know the warning signs. Be alert to possible tax-related identity theft if you're contacted by the IRS. So we talked about the IRS cannot accept your return message. You would get that from a TurboTax. You owe additional tax, or your refund, the refund that you file was offset by a prior year that you didn't return. Or the IRS the IRS records indicate that you received wages or income from an employer from whom you did not work. So if something's fishy, if some things are out of place, there's a chance that you may be experiencing tax fraud. Now, if you suspect that you are a victim of identity theft, and again, because this is a common thing to do, there are very specific steps to take. The first thing, of course, that the IRS recommends that you to do is to continue to pay your taxes. The other thing that you must do, and if this applies to you, please do use my contact information and give me a call. I'd be happy to help you through this. The first thing to do is to file a complaint with the FTC. The FTC stands for Federal Trade Commission, and they're the ones who run identitytheft.gov. Any .gov website is run by the United States government. And then you can place a freeze or a fraud alert. Those are sort of the same two things on your credit reports. Now, the thing is you have to do each credit bureau or credit company separately. So in our country, there are 3 separate credit bureaus or credit companies, and they are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. There's their contact info there. You can, if this ever happens to you, you can certainly just Google. All of these can place a freeze or a fraud alert on your credit, or both. And then the IRS has a form 14039 for identity theft. How to reduce your risk of specifically IRS or tax fraud. Always use security software with firewalls and antivirus. Use strong passwords. So we've already talked about those things. Those are extremely applicable to tax fraud. We've talked a lot about phishing emails tonight. Well, the IRS is a very commonly used institution for those phishing emails to come from. So in other words, it would be very common to receive an email that looks like it's from the IRS and says there's a problem and you need to click here to resolve it. A lot of us would be, scared, alarmed, alerted that we received an email from the IRS. And so we would probably respond to it. That's why criminals use it. Do not click on links or download attachments from unknown or suspicious emails. And also know that the IRS will never call and threaten you with fees or penalties. They threaten you with fees and penalties by mail, never via phone. And that was supposed to be funny, but true. This is what identitytheft.gov looks like. So if tax fraud does happen to you, this is the website you would go to. And it is pretty intuitive. Here's an example of how you fill it out. Everything's automated, pretty easy. And yes, we covered all of these except the police report. In some cases, it is appropriate to file a police report with tax fraud. However, if the tax fraud was committed over the phone or the internet, a police report won't help in that case. Okay, so now I wanted to spend some time talking about financial exploitation. And financial exploitation is different than identity theft, but I would say more common. And financial exploitation involves taking advantage of another human and their finances. Oftentimes, perhaps you can tell by the picture, oftentimes this can happen to seniors. So here are some common scams that happen, especially to seniors, but also to all of us too. Work from home. So these are oftentimes jobs that are offered online that are offering pretty nice pay for work from home. Oftentimes you will do the work from home and then you'll get paid, but the check you'll receive is fraudulent. That happens. Now, of course, especially post-COVID, not all work from home is fraudulent. Lottery. We talked a lot about lottery scams already, so I'm going to skip that one. And same with online shopping. Online shopping, we just talked about how eBay is often used as a platform for scams with online shopping, where you're selling something and someone sends you a check for more than what you sold the item for and asks you to send back the difference. That's a scam. The other two, grandparent scam. Again, this one is very often targeted towards seniors, and it involves usually a phone call or an email from someone who is purporting to be a grandchild, and a grandchild that needs help, that's in trouble and needs help, financial help. Oftentimes like, hey, grandpa, it's Joe. And again, they can get the grandparents' children's names very easily off of Facebook, right? Think about what you post on Facebook. So if I posted that my grandchild was named, Tim, my grandparents' scam might sound something like this. Hey Joe, it's Tim, and I'm overseas for a class trip because you know how old I am, and I've been arrested, in Lithuania, and I need $2,500 for bail. Well, as a grandparent, a concerned grandparent, now you're alarmed. Many grandparents do fall for this and wire the money or send the money some other way. That's a grandparent scam. The spirit of a grandparent scam can apply to all of us. It's taking advantage of our emotions and our empathy and our concern for our loved ones in order to send money immediately, unfortunately, to a scammer and not to a loved one. And then online dating. Online dating scams are very common, and they you could also call this catfishing. In other words, someone is creating a personal, close relationship to someone else online and pretending to be someone they're not. And again, taking advantage of those emotions of trust and closeness in order to ask for money. To avoid an online dating scam, it's fine to meet people online. I met my wife online. That did not turn out to be a scam. However, if we hadn't met in person within a few days or weeks, I would have guessed that maybe something was amiss, especially if she had asked for money before we met. That's a scam. And again, so online dating can happen to anyone at any age, but it is very prevalent with seniors, especially because you add loneliness in as another emotion to take advantage of. Service scams are often targeted, again, towards seniors or other vulnerable adults who may be homebound or may not be able to take care of their home repairs or their yard, and there's something that tips a thief off that that's the case. So you will also oftentimes see service scams when there are storms and someone comes to your house and says, hey, do you need any help cleaning up that storm, all of those trees or limbs? I can do that for you for $500 or $250. The scam comes in when they insist on being paid fully or half upfront, and then no work is performed, or less than stellar work is performed. Your roof needs to be replaced. So that's a common one. What I would say about all of these scams are, if someone is coming to your door in 2022 and trying to sell you things, except perhaps Girl Scout cookies, I would be very, very, very skeptical. I think there are very few companies using door-to-door sales techniques anymore, because they know that it is such a scam-ridden proposition. So it would be very rare. It should be very rare, and you should be very suspicious if you get a knock on your door with someone saying that your roof needs to be replaced, your driveway needs to be resealed, or your lawn needs to be mowed, or that you need a security system. Those are all very common scams with the goal of separating you from your money up front without performing any services. That's the goal. The majority of these scams are not reported. Why is that? I heard someone in the back say, because of friendly fraud. So friendly or family fraud constitutes a lot of the fraud that happens in banking and credit union and in the financial services industry. And what we mean by friendly fraud or family fraud is the identity theft or the financial fraud is committed by someone the victim knows, either a family member or a caretaker. Those are very common. So again, this is more prevalent with seniors who may need more help, doing the daily tasks of their lives. So here's a very common example. Imagine that a senior asks their grandchild or child to please go to the store for them and pick up milk and eggs and bread. And here's either my debit card or my checkbook or some cash. And that trust and that exposure of sensitive information opens the door for friendly fraud. So friendly fraud would occur in that case when the caretaker, the kid, the grandchild did indeed buy the milk and the eggs, but then also took some for themselves. Usually that's how that friendly fraud starts. And then it kind of perpetuates to more and more. Checks are missing out of the checkbook, out of the back of the checkbook, because the caretaker wants to write themselves a check or write someone else a check. Credit cards are missing. Cash is missing. Oftentimes this can happen over time and in little drips and drabs and trickles. Friendly fraud can happen all at once, with one big fake check, or over many years, with $20 extra from the ATM every time. But to answer this question, why don't some report scams? It's because of this. In order to report a scam and get your money back, almost all the time you have to file a police report. And for better or for worse, people are very hesitant to file police reports on their friends and family members. Now, sometimes that can be the most kind and important thing you could probably do for that friend or family member, so that they can stop that behavior. But because we don't want to get them in trouble potentially with something that could cost them money or prison time, or some sort of negative consequence, the fraud goes unreported. And again, here's another reminder of annualcreditreport.com. Remember, this is the way between annualcreditreport.com and checking your credit report and checking your bank statements. Those two things are really fantastic ways to catch identity theft or financial fraud that may have taken place. And if you can catch it quickly, your bank or credit union can help undo it for you, which is good. Okay, so key takeaways, and this is, Takesha, this is the last slide that I've got. So if there are any questions, now would be the perfect time for them. And I'll just go through some of the key takeaways. So number one, understand the modern methods that thieves use, such as phishing. No organization that you do business with will send you an email asking you to click here to log in. Everyone knows, every company knows that that's a scam. And so they will always invite you to visit their website on your own to then log in. Hiding software on your computer to log your keystrokes, otherwise known as key logging, is very common. Having an antivirus software on your computer is the way to stop that. Skimming devices on ATMs and gas pumps. So before you swipe your card, give it a look for those. And then be careful with how much information you give organizations and how much of that information is the same. So in other words, passwords. You should have different passwords for every website. I know that's a tall order and I do not do that myself yet, but I'm working on it. If possible, employ a password manager so that you have complicated passwords that change regularly that only you have access to. Takesha says, no questions so far, just a yikes at how many ways one can be scammed. Okay, yeah. But also, remember, we don't talk about this to scare people. We just want folks to be informed. And be careful. Keep your head on a swivel. Let me finish going through a couple of these. Take precautions to defend yourself. Bullet point 2. Again, strong and varied passwords. Online and at work. Shred all documents that have any personal information on them. View your credit card at least once per year. I recommend twice per year. And look for any unusual activity that you don't recognize. Any other names or addresses that aren't yours should not be on your credit report. If they are, you may be experiencing identity theft. Also look for loans or credit cards that you don't recognize, that you did not open. And then lastly, react swiftly if you are a victim. A lot of again, everything in finance that has been done can usually be undone, but most things have a time limit on them. So it's important that as soon as you understand or think that you are the victim of identity theft or financial fraud, it's important that you act quickly by contacting whomever you're doing that business with. So if it's your bank, contact your bank. If it's the IRS, contact the IRS. Visit identitytheft.gov. Yeah, it's just important to act quickly so that you can stop the damage in case the thief is out there trying more things. And then lastly, not lastly, but very importantly, notify your bank or credit union as quickly as possible, because your bank or credit union immediately will lock down your accounts, will cancel your debit cards. I mean, assuming you want us to, but that's usually what we do. And then file a police report if appropriate. Your bank or credit union is a really good first call if you are experiencing identity theft. Your bank or credit union is experienced and used to dealing with clients who have experienced identity theft, because most thieves want access to your money and your finances. That's their goal. So that's why banks often have a lot of experts who are good at helping you fix this stuff. Yeah, and with that, I'll sum it up. Banks have a lot of experts who can help you avoid identity theft or fix identity theft, or fix the situations that your identity theft may have caused. Okay. And if you have any questions, there's my contact information at the bottom. Phone or email would be wonderful.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you.